This is a download from the BBC of the World Football Phone-In, which is broadcast as part of the Up All Night programme on 5 Live on Saturday mornings. Here's the latest edition.
Let's kick off with Paul in Cardiff. Good morning, Paul.
Hi, good morning, Dustin.
Hi, mate.
I got a question for Tim.
Go ahead.
Hi, Tim.
Hiya, Paul. Then let it be asked. What's on your mind, Paul?
Okay, I am travelling to Buenos Aires in October to visit friends, and I've got the chance to see the River Plate Boca game at El Monumental. My question is, I know it's a bit of a dangerous game to see as well. Do you have any good advice on how to see this game safely?
I don't think it's anything like as dangerous as it was in and around the stadium, because Argentinian football has cut back quite a lot on the amount of tickets that it gives to visiting fans.
Yeah.
So Boca against River is not even a Buenos Aires derby. It's a national derby, and sometimes the clashes between rival fans will happen hundreds of miles away from Buenos Aires.
Yeah.
Get there early, I think, is one. Just the basics of being streetwise in South America. You're never carrying anything that you're not prepared to lose. So if push comes to shove, there's nothing on you that you're going to be absolutely devastated if it's taken from you.
Sure.
But in general, I don't think that there's a great deal to be worried about, because the policing will be extensive. It's a hard thing now to be a football supporter in Argentina, because the policing is so extensive, and what they tend to do in Argentinian grounds now is the reverse of what happens over here. They'll at the end of the game they'll let the away fans out first, and they'll keep the home fans, who are 70, 80, even 90% of the stadium. They'll keep them in the stadium for about half an hour afterwards.
Really?
So these
Sure.
all of these things are. It's like a pain, But the people still go.
Sure.
I think you'll be fine. I think you'll really, really enjoy the atmosphere.
I've heard it's just an incredible atmosphere.
It's an extraordinary atmosphere. And
do you know how much money I might be paying for a ticket?
Well, they're very hard to come by for this game from sources that aren't the black market, and travel agents will have them. The thing that's working in your favour is that Argentina is currently just so cheap. The Argentinian currency is very, very weak. So even if you're paying 3 or 4 times over the odds from a tout or from a travel agent,
it'll still be cheap.
Yeah, you're still paying probably less than you pay for a seat to watch Tottenham or something.
As
like
I
that.
said, I've got friends in Buenos Aires, and they are Argentine nationals. Is there a box office that they can walk up to and get a ticket? It's not like that, is it?
Well, this is a River Plate game. River Plate are at home in the Monumental, so tickets will be available via River Plate. But there'll also be some travel agents that will have them. And on the day, as with all successful
There'll
events,
be touts, will there?
There'll be touts there as well.
Okay. Thank you very much, Tim.
Yeah, Paul, thanks a lot for the call. And on the question of the Olympics, Sean in Southport says the Monster Mash, or Mascherano for those who don't know, wanted to go to the Olympics, so we released him. Why upset a key player? Hopefully he'll come back determined to make up for his absence. Also, Pepe Reina is the Premiership's best keeper, according to him. Andrew in Blackheath, the gent, good morning.
Good morning, Dalton.
Hiya.
Good morning, Sean and Tim.
Morning.
Hi, Andrew.
Dalton, before I ask my question, what on earth was going on 5 Live last night? Every time I put the 5 Live on, I could hear steam trains chugging and whistling.
Oh, that
all
was
night. What were you playing?
That was a steam train special. You know, the boss is one of those anoraks, those train spotting anoraks, and he decided that he was just going to turn 5 Live into a steam train special. Steam night on Up All Night.
I've got it.
I'm only a mere worker in these places, so when the boss says jump, I jump.
More interesting, this morning. I've got a quick question for Sean, if I may, and I want to speak to Tim about a South American player who plays for Spurs. But Sean, I've got a soft spot for Corey Gibbs, as you well know. Very unlucky with his injuries over here. Any idea, have you got any up-to-date news what's happened to him? Has he got himself a club yet?
I have talked to a number of agents. It was a good chance to speak to agents last week at the Major League Soccer All-Star match, because not only is it a match with some of the best footballers in Major League Soccer, they defeated West Ham 3-2, it's almost like a midsummer party for Major League Soccer. Right. So just about anybody who's anybody in and around MLS is there. What I'm hearing from agents is that Corey Gibbs is in contact with a number of Major League Soccer clubs. He thinks that he can continue his career. He would do very, very well in Major League Soccer. If Corey Gibbs can get back to pretty close to full fitness, he immediately becomes one of the top 5 defenders in all of Major League Soccer. You know, he's had spells in England, in Germany, in Holland, previously in American Major League Soccer. Talk about terrible luck. Andrew, I know you know this very well, but for people who haven't heard me reveal this before on the program, this is the bad luck of Corey Gibbs, amongst other stories of bad luck. 2006, he was named to the initial 23-man squad for the U.S. at the World Cup. The U.S. plays 3 friendlies in May prior to leaving for Germany. In the first friendly, Corey Gibbs is injured and immediately is removed from the squad through injury. That's been the story of Corey Gibbs over the last 5 years. I think playing overseas is probably out. I don't think he'll play again in England. He's at a stage in his career where he probably wants to find a club in America, settle in, try to stay healthy, and try to maybe get another good 5-6 years out of his body if he can.
Good. Thanks very much for that update. Tim, hi.
Hello.
Now, because you're in this country, have you managed to see any of the 2 Spurs friendly games in the last week on television?
I saw with great interest and mounting excitement the 5-1 win against Norwich. Yeah, I saw the Norwich game on Monday.
Yeah. Now listen, what I want to tell you, and I'm sure Dotton will cut me a bit of slack because it's you, it's your team. I thought that they were playing marvellous on-the-ground football, reminiscent almost of the push and run, when Jimmy White and Greaves and Dyson and Medway all played about 30 or 40 years ago. I was really impressed. No humping the ball down the middle, even though, knowing how fast Bent is, because I used to watch him play for Charlton, I wish they'd hump it over the centre-backs' heads and Bent to run on. But he scored 4 goals, all as a result of good, slick, on-the-ground football. Don't you agree?
Yeah, I loved watching Giovanni Dos Santos, the Mexican, who I think is a real talent.
Hello.
I think he's a real talent. Yeah. It was wonderful to watch him. I thought it was very notable when Aaron Lennon came on at half-time. They combined quite well, the 2 of them. Yeah, but Dos Santos was the main...
Well, they've got a good midfield, There's Dos Santos, there's Modric, who's not a bit lighter, a good player. Then there's Ginas and Young O'Hara. I've got a tremendous potential there.
And Huddleston, who passes the ball so well. But what really struck me, I think, in the little combinations we had between Lennon and Dos Santos was that of the 2, Dos Santos looked mentally quicker. He was seeing the pass earlier. It's going to be fascinating times, I think, because we're getting someone here who, when Mexico won the World Under-17 Cup, just nearly 3 years ago now, he was voted the player of the tournament, and that's a special talent. Now, he's been crowded out a little bit at Barcelona, but he still managed a hat-trick for them in his last game. And he's taken, many would say, it's a step backward. In terms of the size of club, it clearly is to go from Barcelona to Tottenham. But he's taken a view that he wants first-team football. He's been frozen out a little bit at Barcelona by Messi, and there's a very promising Spaniard of, I think, Serbian origin, Bojan. So he's been crowded out a little bit there. So he's been bold enough to take this step backward. He is frail. It was clear in that the Tottenham-Norwich game, the gulf in the 2 teams, and also the heat of the occasion, because it was a warm night, I think, that in the second half Norwich had no legs, and it was far easier then for Tottenham to pass their way through them. Now, when they're playing Premiership teams, that won't be quite so easy. Dos Santos' frailty will be exposed a little bit more. He'll need to move the ball very quickly because he is physically frail. He'll need to know what he's going to do with the ball before it comes to him. But this is a real talent.
That's what I thought he was really impressive. you know.
And it's going to be very exciting, I think, not just for Tottenham fans, but for football fans, to see how a player of this category and this quality and of this physical type can thrive in the Premiership. And to broaden it out from Tottenham, there's a guy from Chile who Blackburn have just bought called Carlos Villanueva, who is a vaguely similar kind of player. He's fairly slight, but has an absolutely gorgeous left foot.
What's his name?
Carlos Villanueva.
Well, I was going to ask you about another one from Newcastle. They were supposed to buy him from Deportivo La Coruña, a centre-half, Fabrizio Coloccini.
That's right. Coloccini is a battling centre-half. He's quite an experienced player. He's been around for a while. Suffered a little bit from an inflated reputation early on in his career. He went to Milan very early. Didn't really work for him. Went back to Argentina. He's been back and forth a little bit. He's a bruiser. He's a tough centre-half. Not the quickest. But to get back to what we were saying about Dos Santos and Villanueva. And Villanueva is an artist with the ball. But he's slight. And unlike Dos Santos, I don't think he's particularly quick. Dos Santos has lightning acceleration. Villanueva doesn't quite have that pace. Now, I see just in the paper today that Paul Ince, his new manager there at Blackburn, has been really talking up Villanueva with his skill, and he's an exciting player. And that'll be another very interesting one, because Villanueva will really have to up the rhythm of his game. If he comes off, it's going to be terrific for the Premiership. So I think these two players, fairly slight of build but wonderful left feet, Dos Santos of Tottenham and Villanueva of Blackburn, they're going to make it a very interesting season in the Premiership.
Yeah, Andrew, thanks a lot for the call. Trivia question for Sean from Khalid, who's a United fan in Leytonstone, vis-a-vis goalkeepers. Can you name the North American keeper who in 2 appearances at Old Trafford conceded 16 goals?
Paul Rachubka? Is it an American? Is it Paul Rachubka who was third choice? Is that what we're looking for?
I think it's Craig Forrest.
The Canadian. Funny enough, I saw Craig Forrest in Toronto last week. He didn't mention anything about conceding 16 goals.
I wouldn't have thought so. This is from Danny in Dumbarton. Danny in Dumbarton says, if you can remember, I emailed you a few weeks ago asking about Celtic's popularity in America. I then watched the MLS All-Stars game against West Ham, and I saw more Celtic strips in the crowd than West Ham strips. This made me believe that Celtic are now looking to move into the American market and sign a player from the MLS. There was talk of a player called Shalrie Joseph, who plays for New England, coming to Celtic. Also, Dominic Servey was on trial with Celtic. I was wanting to ask Sean if he has heard of any Celtic transfer talk in America.
Well, the match was in Toronto, and Celtic, as popular as they are in the United States, they're a lot more popular in Canada. Rangers and Celtic, I think, are more popular than Canada's lone top-flight club, Toronto FC. Both sides are massively popular. Scottish football and English football are incredibly popular. The Premiership gets bigger numbers audience-wise in Canada. This is the English Premiership, than does the Premiership in the United States. And again, Scottish football coverage, you'll pick up a newspaper in Montreal or Toronto or Vancouver, and you'll actually see the Scottish table, something that's just unthinkable in the United States. The goalkeeper Dominic Servey did have a trial with Celtic. He actually went to University of Tulsa in the United States, was drafted by Chicago Fire. And again, that's the amateur players draft that if you listen to this program, you've heard me talk about, where you're essentially taken as an amateur outside of university. Chicago Fire had his rights. They offered him a contract of $40,000 US, about 20,000 pounds, to which Dominic Servey said, thanks, but no thanks. I think I'll look abroad. Dominic Servey's grandparents are Italian, so he's able to get an Italian passport, which then makes him not an American but an EU citizen, which is a little easier to latch onto a club. But Servey had the trial at Celtic. That didn't work out. Servey just recently, last week, had a trial at Portsmouth. That didn't work out, so he's still looking for a club. Now, in terms of Shalrie Joseph, he's a Grenadian international. Bruce Arena, the former U.S. manager, told me that if Shalrie Joseph had been able to not play for Grenada, he would have gotten him a U.S. passport. He would have been first choice and still first choice for the United States. Shalrie Joseph is the best holding midfielder in Major League Soccer. His manager at New England Revolution, who are currently top of the table, is none other than Steve Nicol. So don't think that Steve Nicol hasn't been filing a few reports to his friends back in Scotland. Shalrie Joseph has the body to play for a major football club in Scotland, in England, or in Europe. He's someone who I think is going to be headed over very, very soon.
David in Middlesbrough, good morning.
Good morning.
Hiya.
Yeah, hi, morning. I'd like to ask you about how Jaime Moreno is doing. He used to play for Middlesbrough. I believe in last season, Beckham was booked for kicking into the ground, but he's a guy that used to play for us years ago. I've not heard of him for years.
Jaime Moreno, it's funny, he's one of the greatest players in the history of Major League Soccer, and he came in 1996, which was the inaugural season of the league. 3 years ago, it looked like Jaime Moreno was really about finished. He had gone to New York, he was unhappy, and then he wound up moving back to DC United, which is the club that he left Middlesbrough for. He was marvelous at DC United. They won the first 2 Major League Soccer championships with Jaime Moreno. They finished runner-up in the 3rd year. They won it in the 4th year, a dominant early club, the first big club in the league. Since he's returned to DC United, he's been rejuvenated. The match I'm actually doing on Saturday night, about 21 hours from now, Jaime Moreno will be up top with the Brazilian Luciano Emilio. They form just a devastatingly strong striker tandem. Jaime Moreno is the all-time leading goal scorer in the history of Major League Soccer. And again, the league's just been around since 1996. It may be eclipsed one day, but it'll stand for a while. And Jaime Moreno is still banging them in. I've often thought if Jaime Moreno had resisted the temptation to come to the United States, if he had tried to stick it out a little longer in England, I think he would have really made an impact. He's Bolivian, and if you can think back to the mid-'90s, a lot of South Americans weren't getting a chance in England, and it was somewhat rare, as you'll recall, for Middlesbrough to have a Bolivian in Jaime Moreno. Had he stuck it out, I think he would have really done very, very well. I think he would have banged in goals in the Premier League, and I think he might still be kicking around somewhere, but England's loss, Middlesbrough's loss has certainly been Major League Soccer and DC United's gain.
Right. There was another one of ours, Hamilton Ricard. How did he get on?
The footballer again, I'm sorry?
Hamilton Ricard, the Colombian striker who went to Uruguay. Last I heard, he was in Uruguay. And he was alternatively delighting and infuriating fans there, as he's alternatively delighted and infuriated fans wherever he's gone.
I think you can certainly say that for the Borough as well, yeah.
Yeah, David, I don't want to interrupt your late night supper there, or were you washing the pots and pans?
Yes, I was actually. Yeah.
Oh, cheers, thanks. We're just trying to get on with the football show here. You go and wash your pots and pans.
Well, yeah, as you can tell by the echo, I'm in the kitchen, yeah.
Right, no, it's always a pleasure to have people listening wherever you may be. Thanks very much for that. Gary in Belfast, good morning.
Good morning, thanks for having me on.
Pleasure, mate.
I'm going to talk about a couple of Uruguayans in a moment, but just that discussion on goalkeepers has got me thinking. I think as much as Tim's excited about Giovanni Dos Santos, I think Gomez could well be the more significant signing because he was the difference. He has been the difference in the last 3-4 seasons between PSV and the rest. He got many points for them and made big saves at big times, and I think he could be crucial. I don't know what you think about that, Tim. You think Gomez is as good as a lot of PSV fans put him?
I think he's such a big spidery fellow. Those arms, they kind of snake out and they fill the whole goal. He's a difficult man to get past. He's got terrific reflexes. One thing which I have noticed about him, I think sometimes there's a tendency for him to flap downwards at crosses, which is a weakness. You know, if you're going to come out for the cross and you can't catch it, you want to punch it up and away, and sometimes I've seen him flap downwards. But in general, I think he's very, very athletic, and I agree with you. I think he's likely to be a very good signing for Tottenham.
I think it's a brilliant. He broke many a heart in back in the Eredivisie. But what I wanted to talk about initially was the 2 Uruguayans at Ajax, Tim, Bruno Silva, the right back, and the very, very impressive Luis Suarez. Both who came from Groningen. Have they had much of an impact on the Uruguayan national team, and what do you think about them in general?
Yeah, Suarez is an excellent player. He's a striker who can work either from the central position or I think better perhaps from a little bit wider, cutting in, because he's got pace, he's got acceleration, he's got a little bit of devil, and he's a very interesting player indeed. A really, really interesting striker, stocky, difficult to knock off the ball, very impressive, and has already made an impact with the Uruguayan national team. And is in their team for World Cup qualification. Is looking very good, and they're scoring lots of goals, Uruguay, and Suarez is part of that. Silva has just got into the Uruguayan national team. A tall right back who's got some ability on the ball, crosses the ball well. Had a couple of games as in friendlies for Uruguay 2 or 3 years ago when he was still playing at home, I think with Danubio, and has just got back in on the back of what I think was a good season with Uruguay, and played well in the last 2 rounds of World Cup qualifiers in June. So another good season could really see him bolt down that right-back position for Uruguay.
Thanks very much, Tim. I look forward to the marathon next week.
Well, it's going to be fantastic. Gary, thanks for mentioning that. If you've just heard, it's a 4-hour football special next Saturday at this time on Up All Night. From 1 till 5, we'll be talking world football entirely. Hope you can join us then. But first, Anne in Bingley, West Yorkshire. Appreciate you waiting so patiently, Anne. Good morning.
Good morning, boys.
Hiya.
Good morning,
Nice
Anne.
to hear you and listen to you. I just want to slightly take Tim to task.
Do it. Let it be done, Anne. Let it be done.
Well, you talk about the North American teams, but you never, ever, or hardly ever
That's not Tim.
mention my favourite.
But that's not Tim. That's Sean you want to take to task. isn't
sorry.
it?
But you can
Sorry,
take me to
Tim.
task anyway. I'll be taken.
It's still
Sorry, Sean. I always get you mixed up. I do beg your pardon.
no problem.
Yeah, you never mention my favourite. You seem to stick to the teams down both coasts, and you never talk about the teams in the middle of your country, including the ones who won the championship either last year or the year before, Houston Dynamos.
Oh, I
Please,
love
can
Houston
you tell us a
Dynamo.
bit about Houston Dynamos and their players and what have you?
I will be happy to. That's a wonderful side. Dominic Kinnear is the manager, former U.S. international who was born in Scotland. Very good footballer. His assistant is John Spencer, ex-Scotland, ex-QPR, ex-Chelsea. They really form a nice partnership. It's a very nice marriage between a head coach and an assistant coach. This is a really talented side. Start with the goalkeeper, Pat Onstad, a Canadian international, had to spell it Dundee. At 40 years old, is the oldest footballer in Major League Soccer. He's still the best goalkeeper, in my opinion, in Major League Soccer. Even Brad Gazan, who is no longer in MLS when he was at Chivas USA, I still thought Onstad was a better goalkeeper than Gazan. They have an outstanding striker in Brian Ching, a U.S. international. Dwayne De Rosario is the best Canadian goal scorer of his generation. He likes to play just behind Ching. This is a side that has won the last 2 Major League Soccer Cup finals, defeating New England Revolution. 2 years ago, they won in the Cup final on penalty kicks. Last year, they defeated New England in 90 minutes. They started off slowly this year, and they're starting to get their good form. They actually play New England on Tuesday in the final of something called the Superliga. That's a second-year competition between a number of Mexican sides and Major League Soccer sides, and 2 MLS sides are through to the final. So New England and Houston in a rematch of the last 2 MLS Cup finals. That could be a preview of this year's Major League Soccer Cup final. I will happily talk about any of the 14 clubs in MLS. We don't get a lot of questions for Kansas City Wizards. You know, I live in Kansas City, and yet we never get Kansas City Wizards questions either. I just think because you have a lot of the bigger players gravitating to either New York or to New England, Beckham in Los Angeles as well with David Beckham.
Yeah.
You have the sides, as you're right, on the East Coast and the West Coast, but I will happily talk about any club anytime.
Can I ask you one more thing as well?
Absolutely.
Do you know if it's possible, perhaps by the internet, to actually get things, you know, key rings, shirts, what have you, actually in England?
Absolutely. Dalton, am I allowed to promote a website?
I'm not listening. You go ahead, mate.
Thanks, Dalton.
Go to MLSnet.com, so MLSNET.com, which is Major League Soccer's official website. As you troll around on there, look on the menu on the left. There'll be something where I believe it says something like Shop MLS or Purchase Gear. You'll be able to go on there, you'll be able to order, and they will ship it anywhere in the world. My friend Stu Crystal is the director of marketing. I think he owes me a free T-shirt or a cap for giving this nice plug, but they will gladly ship internationally. MLSNET.com, MLSnet.com. Buy a Kansas City Wizards shirt. Do yourself a favor. That's a good club. Although I know you like Houston in the orange.
It's got to be Houston.
That's
Houston
quite all
to
right.
go with my Leeds ones.
I'm
One
going to be in
final thing.
Houston.
Do you know where Eddie Lewis is at the moment?
I'm sorry?
Do you know where Eddie Lewis is?
No, I do not.
Right. I'll have to try and track him down from this end of the country.
I was on a roll until then, though.
Thank you ever so much, lads.
Sure,
I
sure.
love listening to you.
Appreciate it, and thanks very much for the call.
Sean, can you continue your role and tell me if New England Revolution, did they come out to that Jonathan Richman and the Modern Lovers song, I Love New England?
No, but that's a really inspired
Why
idea,
don't
Tim.
they? Why don't they? It's so charming. It's impossible to dislike. Get them out to I Love New England by Jonathan Richman and the Modern Lovers.
Wouldn't that be good? I'm going to text you Paul Mariner, their assistant, the ex-England striker's phone number. Call him up right after this show and suggest that. I think that's a great
I don't
idea.
really see Paul Mariner as a Jonathan Richman and the Modern Lovers fan.
You
to
might be
honest.
surprised, actually. He's quite a Renaissance man. That's a really inspired idea, Tim.
Dear Mr. Vickery, since when have Liverpool been serious about the Premier League in the last 20 years? Says Tim in
Liverpool?
Manchester.
Well, this was the question that I was trying to put out, because it does send a signal.
Joseph in Ireland, good morning.
Hello.
Hi, Joseph, go ahead.
Well, I've got a question. Well, I've got a couple of questions for Tim, first of all.
Yeah, go ahead.
First question is about Paraguayan centre forward called Oscar Cardoso.
Yep.
Now, I've heard you talking before about obviously Roque Santa Cruz, and there's the other Paraguayan centre forward you've mentioned a few times, but I haven't heard a whole lot on the show about Oscar Cardoso. I understand he's playing with Benfica.
And had a very good season with them last season. Paraguay have suddenly got a lot of strength in depth up front. They've got Santa Cruz. They've got a guy called Cabañas who's been sensational for 2 years, the last 2 years in Libertadores. And they've got a guy called Nelson Heidel Valdez, who plays in Germany, who's a promising player. So Cardoso is in the international squad, although he's has to be content with a substitute's place usually. He's a little bit ungainly. He looks awkward, left-footed striker, but he's much more dangerous than he looks. You look at him and you think he's clumsy, he's falling over, he's all over the place, but he's not to be underestimated. His goal-scoring record with Benfica has been very, very good indeed. And a few years ago, he'd have got a game with Paraguay, no problem at all. Now, as I say, he's been squeezed out a little bit, but if he has another good season with Benfica, then he's putting the pressure on. And with Santa Cruz, obviously, he's just had a terrific season for Blackburn. Long may it continue, but there is that question mark about him being injury-prone. So, if Santa Cruz does get injured, that might mean more opportunities for Oscar Cardoso.
He sounds like a very physical kind of a player, though. Do you think he'd have a chance of making it in Serie A or the Premiership, perhaps?
Perhaps. I would wonder about his lack of pace, because the standard of the Portuguese league, I think, is nowhere near as the strength in depth of Spain or England or Germany or the Premiership and so on. So it's a step up that I would wonder about a little bit. But as I say, he's better than he looks. So he might well make the move one day and prove me wrong.
Okay. There was one more question I wanted to ask you about Tim. We've obviously seen the way Brazil have started their World Cup qualifying campaign. And I'm just wondering, is their whole system of playing, the 4-2-2-2 with the overlapping fullbacks, is that kind of becoming an obsolete system, or?
I think it has, to be honest. I think there is a problem with it. It's a system that they really fell on in 1994 when they won the World Cup that year. They'd been in tactical confusion for a while beforehand, and this was a system that was inside their own tradition. With a 4-4-2 and the attacking fullbacks. But what I think has happened is the quality of the two central midfielders has gone down and down and down. In 1994, they had Mauro Silva, who read the game so well, almost slotted in like a third centre-back, although he played as a midfielder, but he read the game so well. And they had Dunga, who passed the ball well. And if you've got attacking fullbacks, you have to have someone from central midfield who can pass to them crisply to free them. Otherwise, the ball never comes. You might as well not have them. And I think that the story of Brazil recently has been that the two central midfielders have got worse for a number of reasons. One reason is that in domestic Brazilian football, coaches are afraid of losing their jobs. So what do? They play safe. So essentially, many of them have been playing two centre-backs in front of the centre-backs. And a logical conclusion of that has been Gilberto Silva, who's a converted centre-back, playing central midfield for Brazil without any real ability to pass the ball. Now he's just over the hill physically. I think he declined horribly in the last year and became a liability, I think, for Brazil. And alongside him was Mineiro, who's just a runner with no real class at all. The Olympics has come as an absolute godsend for Brazil, because it's a chance for them to get more passing midfielders who can operate in that space and free the fullbacks with diagonal passes. There was a move that I saw from Brazil in training. I watched them training just before the recent World Cup qualifiers, where they played very badly, and they did this move in training where just a simple move where they've got the fullbacks either side and everyone else on the edge of the box, and the ball's played out to the fullbacks, and the fullbacks curl in crosses, and then everyone else takes it in turns to attack the ball. Sometimes they've got the two centre-backs in to defend. Sometimes it's just the goalkeeper against people coming in, one at the near post, one at the far post, to have a go either heading or volleying the ball into the net. And this is vital to the way they play with those attacking fullbacks. But the problem is this training exercise isn't being reproduced in the games because the ball is never arriving for the fullbacks for them to put in those crosses because the central midfield play is so bad. So that's the area of the team that they really need to improve on. Better central midfield players because as you say, Joseph, the model of that 4-2-2-2 thing has been looking a little bit tired, simply I think because the quality of the central midfielders has declined so much.
Hey, Joseph, thanks very much. We've got two in a row from Cardiff, one from a Liverpool supporter, but first let's take Paul in Cardiff, who's not a Liverpool supporter. Paul, good morning.
Hello, yeah, good morning.
Hi, mate.
I'd like to ask Sean a question, please, on Kenny Cooper.
Go ahead.
Certainly. Kenny Cooper is not coming to Cardiff. It was rumored that he was. There was a lot of pressure with Major League Soccer to sell Kenny Cooper, and the pressure came back from FC Dallas saying you cannot sell Kenny Cooper. FC Dallas just sold their outstanding midfielder, the Colombian. I know Tim Vickery knows him very well, Juan Toja, to Steaua Bucharest. I'll give you a little backstory if you're not that familiar with MLS. It is the league itself and not the individual clubs that control the contract. So you have this almost surreal situation where Major League Soccer wants to sell a player and the club is saying, no, wait a minute, you can't sell this player because the club doesn't get any money. Dallas was really hurt losing Toja. They would be devastated losing Kenny Cooper. Saying that, I think Kenny Cooper is going to be coming over to English football / Welsh football probably in the next 6 to 12 months, possibly in the winter transfer window. Don't know if he's headed to Cardiff or not. Kenny Cooper is big for a striker, 6'5". He's big for a goalkeeper at 6'5", over 200 pounds. Dot and Tim, help me out. I can never do stone to pound. I don't know what's big. What is that, 15, 18 stone?
Yeah, Tim knows.
Oh, I haven't stood anywhere near a scale for some times.
Paul, can you help out?
He's big, trust me.
I wouldn't know. I know I'm a bit more than that, though.
He would be like a heavyweight boxer. Looks like Vitaly Klitschko's body, if that's a good reference. I can't figure out.
I've seen him on the internet. He looks pretty impressive. So I was hoping like he'd come over here, but it don't look like, does it?
It's not going to happen. FC Dallas actually released a statement just this week saying that despite the offers, Kenny Cooper is not going to be leaving the club. It's a situation right now.
How does he feel about that?
Kenny Cooper?
Yeah.
I'm sure he's absolutely gutted. You know, his father, Kenny Cooper Sr., is English. He actually came to America, played in the North American Soccer League, was an outstanding goalkeeper in the 70s with Dallas Tornado. That's why Kenny Cooper was playing in Dallas, why he grew up in Dallas, and why he would love to go back. Kenny Cooper was actually a trainee at Manchester United, was not signed. Sir Alex Ferguson elected not to sign him. He could have gotten his work permit with an English father, came back to Dallas, has been very successful in Major League Soccer. Tied for second right now in the Golden Boot race in the league. He is someone who can play in English / Welsh football because we're talking about Cardiff. He's big, he's strong, he's great in the air. It's not long before he leaves MLS and heads over across the Atlantic.
What about the Bosman ruling? Doesn't that apply in the States?
No, it doesn't, because the situation is different. The Bosman ruling is if you're out of contract, what in American parlance would be called a free agent. This is a different situation because Kenny Cooper is still under contract, but, and here's the difference from MLS and the rest of the world in football, he's under contract in Major League Soccer. He's not under contract to his club, FC Dallas. So it's the league.
I'm sorry? How come the Dallas put a block on it? Is the MLS hold the contract?
It's a very weird situation where you have pressure coming from all different sides. Major League Soccer would pocket the transfer money. Look at Brad Guzan going to Aston Villa. He's sold by Chivas USA. He's played for Chivas USA since the club came into existence, one of their original players, and yet Major League Soccer takes the money. They developed this young goalkeeper. They drafted him out of university, and yet it's Major League Soccer, not Chivas USA, that gets that money. When Tim Howard, who was developed by New York, the club now called Red Bulls, then called Metro Stars, was sold to Manchester United in the summer of 2003. Major League Soccer got that money, even though Tim Howard had signed with New York at 18 years old. It's not a great system. It's a system that was needed in the mid-90s when they launched Major League Soccer, trying to get the league going in 1996, to have this sort of salary sanity, for lack of a better term. They have salary sanity. They have situations now where people aren't overspending. They're starting to liberalize, where you can bring in a David Beckham or Cuauhtemoc Blanco or Juan Pablo Angel, but they need to get rid of this situation. As far as I'm concerned, if FC Dallas wants to sell a footballer, they can sell it. If they don't, then they don't have to sell that footballer. But it makes it very awkward, very strange when now the league is getting into it. You have the league and the club saying, do we sell this player or do we not sell this player?
Paul, thanks a lot. And thanks to Paul on the M1 who figured out that... how many pounds was it that you wanted converted again, Sean?
I'm saying Kenny Cooper is over 200 pounds.
200 pounds, yeah.
I know it's multiplied by 14. I just can't figure that out.
Right, yeah. Even I knew that, for goodness sake.
Well, I knew that, but you're not from Kansas. It's impressive if you're from Kansas and you know that.
So. But Paul on the M1's worked it out. He says it's 14 stone, 8 pounds. And I'll have to take his word for it. Tim, will you take his word for it?
No, I'm very happy with that. Well
okay,
done.
I'm happy with that.
So that's a big striker. So 14 stone 8 and 6'5". That's a big target striker.
Although 14 stone 8 pounds from where I'm sitting, it's quite a slim geezer. But then again, James in Cardiff. Hey, we've been asking for a Liverpool fan. Well, at least Tim Vickery has. James?
Hello?
Hello, James. You're the Liverpool fan that Tim Vickery's been trying to goad into calling all night.
Yeah, there's one or two of us still left. I was just wondering, David Silva down at Valencia. Valencia's in severe financial problems at the moment. Would he not be a very good option instead of Gareth Barry at the moment?
David Silva, they're not really in either of our territories. Is that one for you, Sean? David Silva?
It's not one for me, mate.
European football more so, I suppose, James.
I think that's one that we can tease up for Andy Brassel next week.
Next week.
Let's tease it. Let it be teased.
You know, tonight it's North American and South American football.
Can I ask you, James?
Yeah.
What you think about the fact that Liverpool are releasing Mascherano for the Olympics when they don't need to? What do you think about that?
I would rather him not go. Obviously, we have a fair-sized midfield pack at the moment anyway. Is it good politics? Yes, probably good politics in the sense that we can get maybe some benefit out of it from the Argentinian football in the future.
And does it send out a signal to the other the big guns in the Premiership that perhaps Liverpool aren't as ambitious as they might be in this competition?
Well, I don't think it doesn't mean you're ambitious. It's only for a couple of weeks at the beginning of the season.
3 points. 3 points in 2 weeks' time. They could decide the fate of the championship.
Ask United if they're not going to have Cristiano Ronaldo around. I think Mascherano going away, fine, he's going to get to play football. His pre-season will be fine. I don't think it's a problem to us because we have a strength in depth in the midfield. Our problem has been up front and getting the ball into score.
And you've got problems this season as well, no doubt. James, thanks a lot for the call. Just very quickly, Sean, and these quick fire rounds, if you will, guys, because we've still got some callers waiting to get on. Sean, first of all, which Premiership team do you support? That's none, isn't it? Well, that's from Carol in Norwich.
Yeah, QPR is my club, but I was just having this conversation last week.
We weren't talking Premiership. She was talking Premiership.
I know. I know it's a quick fire round, but forgive this indulgence. It's tough to support a club when you never get to see them on television and you live thousands and thousands of miles away. So maybe people can send in suggestions of which Premiership side I should take, but I'm holding out for QPR.
It doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that.
There's a lot of money coming into the Super Hoops. I'm not giving up yet.
Good.
I think you seem to have jinxed QPR, so can I suggest that you become an Arsenal fan?
It doesn't work like that. It does not work like that. Dan in Lancaster says, I was recently in Utah and I was surprised by the amount of soccer fields I saw. Is Salt Lake City a soccer hotspot or something? Maybe it's a Mormon thing or something.
No, it's just the part of the country. In the warmer weather cities and states, and Utah certainly is that, they get a fair amount of snow in the winter, but they get very, very warm springs and summers with the hot desert air. There's a lot of football being played. Real Salt Lake, Dotton, you admit it. After Charlton, that's your club, Real Salt Lake. I know you love Real Salt Lake, don't you? Speaking of second clubs.
Moving on swiftly.
I don't know how that came up, but I know that you love that club. We've been saying that for 2 years. I still have to get you a shirt. But that's one of the best supported sides in Major League Soccer.
Yeah, good.
I don't know if it's a hotbed like California or, say, New York, but it's getting there. It's a great football town, Salt Lake City.
Asif asks, is next month's World Cup qualifier in Havana the first time the senior US team will have played in Cuba? Also, is it likely that any journalists or fans will be allowed to attend the match either officially or unofficially?
Good question.
That's a great question. On the United States soccer website, they've posed that question because they're getting thousands and thousands of ticket inquiries. Now, it's not illegal for a United States citizen to travel to Cuba, because as a democracy, we can't really make that illegal. It is illegal for a United States citizen to spend money in Cuba, which makes it very difficult to travel to Cuba. You have to apply for what's called a license through the United States Treasury. Now, you can be granted this license, say, if you're there as a journalist or on a humanitarian mission, as an athlete, maybe on a teaching mission, a cultural exchange. The Cuban government loves to have Americans in, and they love for Americans to bring the dollars with them. But unless you get a license from the Treasury Department and you go to Cuba and the U.S. government finds us out that you spend money, you can be fined and imprisoned. So it's not going to be a lot of U.S. supporters. I may have the chance to go. I would be able to get a journalistic visa, for lack of a better term. Really, it's a journalistic license from the Treasury Department. It would be a wonderful experience. That's a country that I would love to go to. And it's a shame, politics aside, that American fans will not be able to travel 90 minutes south of Florida to an away qualifier. Forgetting politics entirely, it's a shame that U.S. supporters who want to travel to a match would not be able to go to through decades and decades of a lot of political tension.
I'll tell you what, I don't want to rub it in, but if you can't make it, at least we'll be able to make it. That's the good news, isn't it, Sean? So
my wife has a British passport. She can go and tell me all about it.
She can go as well. And tell all the US fans that we'll report from there for you, if you like. Let's go straight to Rory in Springfield, West Midlands. Good morning, Rory.
Hi, Don. How you doing?
I'm very well, thanks very much. You got a question for Tim?
I do, yeah. Hi, Tim.
Hi, mate.
I was lucky enough to go to the Flamengo-Vasco derby in Rio a few weeks ago. And
you know, I flew back that day. I booked the flight before checking the fixtures. What a schoolboy error.
Oh, you missed it.
Yeah, so I missed it. So I was flying while that happened. And just as we were coming into land, the pilot happily told us to score.
It was a great game. And there was a few players on Flamengo that I was very impressed with, particularly the goalkeeper.
Yeah, he's a terrific goalkeeper, Bruno.
Yeah,
Brazil's producing very good goalkeepers at the moment.
Yeah,
he's a good one.
The two guys in central midfield, Christian scored an absolutely great goal.
Good player.
And Jonatas.
Yeah. Jonatas had a spell in Spain with Espanyol.
Right.
And he turned up, this was 2 years ago that he went, and gave a press conference at the airport saying how much he liked Barcelona, which, the team Barcelona, not the city, which wasn't really the way to make friends and influence people with Espanyol. He's had a troubled time since, and he's gone back because the Espanyol move didn't quite work out. He's a very, very talented player, perhaps a little bit complicated, a little bit of a shy guy, but they're very strong in those central midfield positions. Flamengo. They've just had a little wobble when you saw them. They're up top of the Brazilian Championship. They've just come down to fourth at the moment. They've just had a little wobble, but they're strong in those central midfield positions with Ibson, who's a good player on loan from Porto.
I think he scored a penalty.
He's not quite playing as well as he did last year when he was an absolute prince, just bestriding the field from one penalty area to the other. And they've also got a guy who's rebuilding his career after having a great 2002 World Cup and then falling down a black hole, Kleberson. So they're very strong in those central midfield areas.
Yep. There's a couple more players. That big number 9 who reminded me of John Carew, because I'm a Villa fan. I thought he was quite similar to him. He's called Sousa.
Yeah, he's just been sold. That's right. Yeah, he's just been sold, I think, to Panathinaikos. He's already been to Europe a couple of times. He had a spell in Bulgaria and he had a spell in Portugal. He was top scorer in the Brazilian Championship a couple of years ago. There's not a great deal of class there. I don't think he's as good back to goal as he should be. I think with the strength in midfield that Flamengo have, I think a striker who can play back to goal and give the 1-2s for the midfielders arriving from deep, I think we'll have a lot of joy with that team. But he's a big fella and he's a bruiser and he's not a bad finisher. There are plenty of goals that he scored in his career, even though he's never going to be one for the stylists.
Yeah, and what's the chances of Ronaldo getting to Flamengo? Because I hear it's like a boyhood dream of his.
Very much so, and he grew up supporting Flamengo. Has never played for the club, but it's always been a dream for him. And they would take him back. He's never been there, but they would take him for commercial reasons, if nothing else. So he's got to get back fit, and the door has been closed to him now at Milan. Milan don't want him anymore. He's still looking very, very big, but he made things a little bit hard for himself with that unfortunate involvement with transvestites.
That's right, yeah.
Because when he does come to play for Flamengo, which I'm sure he will, if he can recover from this latest injury, I'm sure he will play for Flamengo. If not immediately, then fairly soon. In fact, I think it could be something that really motivates him to get fit. It's going to be a hard battle at his age now to get fit from another knee injury. But just so his son can see him play for Flamengo, I think that could be a really important thing in terms of his motivation. But the supporters of the other clubs, Vasco and Fluminense and Botafogo, I guarantee they will never ever let him forget that he had a night with transvestites.
Of course.
Never.
Yeah. Rory, thanks a lot for the call.
Yeah, thanks, John.
Yeah, no, it's a pleasure. Quick message here from Andrew for you, Tim. Can I just say that your guest has got it wrong? Dos Santos was not player of the tournament in the Under-17 World Cup. It was Man United's Anderson, and also not all players of that tournament turned into stars. Just got to mention Letalic and Sinama Pongoli. So if Dos Santos...
That's from previous Under-17 championships.
Right. So
Anderson was named as player of the tournament before the final, and then he limped off after 5 minutes of the final, and Dos Santos helped Mexico beat Brazil by 3-0.
Andrew concludes, if Dos Santos is such a talent, why would Barca sell him?
Well, because he's been squeezed out. As I said, that they've got two other players for that position, one of which is Lionel Messi, who's now the king of the hill, and another one who's just come through and was a star for Spain in the last under-17 championship, Boyan. So, there's three players for that position. One's the king of the hill, the other's a Spaniard. Dos Santos gets squeezed out.
So Tony in Liverpool says, Sean, seen as you're loud, intelligent and funny, you are an honorary Scouser, so you must support Liverpool for a Premiership team. Also,
that's really nice. That's a very, very tempting offer.
Gary the Milkman in Exeter says, can Sean please clarify something? Does that mean Major League Soccer bought and owned David Beckham? If so, how do they decide which team he'd play for?
That's different. That's called the designated player rule, which is oftentimes actually referred to as the Beckham rule. What happens in that situation is that Major League Soccer pays the first $400,000 of a designated player. All 14 clubs can have 2 designated players. They can actually trade for more designated players, but you're given 2. So Major League Soccer will pay the first $400,000. David Beckham makes $5.5 million US. You hear the $250 million over 5 years. That's with a lot of things. That's merchandising and appearances and all sorts of incentives and bonuses, but his wage is $5.5 million. Major League Soccer pays $400,000. Anschutz Entertainment Group, the owner of LA Galaxy, pay the next $5.1 million. That's different, but every other player coming over outside of those designated players, Juan Pablo Angel when he came from Aston Villa to New York Red Bulls, designated player, that's different. But everyone else coming over is owned by Major League Soccer. When you get a check as a footballer, unless you're someone like David Beckham or Juan Pablo Angel, your check actually says from Major League Soccer. It doesn't say from your individual club.
I've got to ask you this question from Liam in London later on, Tim, but for now, let me just leave it aside. Can Sean tell me a little bit about New England Revolution, as I want to start supporting them? Also, where can I see...
I love England.
Fair enough. They're going to use it eventually, but not just tonight. Also, where can I see Major League Soccer games online? That's from Graham in Bolton.
Why, it's our favorite website, MLSnet.com. I'm actually looking at that right now.
No more. So tell us a little bit about... On the top
right, there's video, audio, and there's also a link called Shop. And
tell us a little bit about the Revolution then.
New England Revolution's a fantastic side. Their manager, the former Liverpool and Scotland defender Steve Nicol. We referred to their assistant manager earlier. That's Paul Mariner, late of Ipswich and Arsenal, and of course a great England striker in the 1980s. They've been league runner-ups the last 3 years. They currently sit top of the table. Shalry Joseph, the Grenadian international, I was referring to earlier in the program, best holding midfielder in Major League Soccer. Their goalkeeper, Matt Reese, doesn't get talked about a lot, has never been in the U.S. picture, consistently one of the top 2 or 3 goalkeepers year in, year out in Major League Soccer, having a phenomenal year. Their top striker, Taylor Twellman, one of the last cuts in the 2006 U.S. squad. It actually came down between Taylor Twellman and Brian Ching, the Houston Dynamo striker. Ching was selected over Twellman, but Twellman, he's almost like the Matthew Letitia of U.S. football. Banging at all those goals at club level, but never really gets a look at international level. Twellman has been hurt through much of this year, and yet to the credit of Nicol, Mariner, and all of New England Revolution, they still have managed to go top of the table. They're a very, very talented side. They're a side that wins with not the best talent every year, which is a credit to their coaching and to their system.
What about Niassi, asks Mark in Coventry?
Sana Niassi is a young 19-year-old that has come over to Major League Soccer. Earlier in the year, New England was so banged up, they actually had to start 3 19-year-olds. Now, that's not strange in a lot of parts of the football world. That's very, very strange in Major League Soccer, where first-year professionals are 22 and 23 years old. Sandy Nyasi has come over. He has made an impact on the club. He's part of the reason why the club has been able to stay top of the table, withstanding all of their injuries. Young players, Kelly Dubé is another good young player that has come in for New England Revolution. They find these footballers that people don't really talk about, that aren't that heralded. They've never had a designated player. They've never gone out and bought a huge player. They talked about Robbie Fowler coming over at one time. That deal obviously never materialized. They keep winning. I think the sign of an outstanding club is when you get players that aren't expected to do much and they turn out to be very, very good. I think a great coach or a great coaching staff always makes players a level better. So the fair players are good, the good players are great, and the great players are outstanding. And that's what New England Revolution do.
You've been listening to a download of the World Football Phone-In from Up All Night at BBC Radio 5 Live. You can put your questions live on Saturday mornings from 2:30am to 4am, or you can email us at upallnight@bbc.co.uk. That's upallnight, all one word, at bbc.co.uk.